80% of people are using AI search as part of their research process. 80%. Buyer behavior has radically changed in the last 6 months. We get to throw away the old playbooks and create something brand new. If you haven't yet started thinking about how do you show up in the LLMs, you're behind. Reviews and the voice of the customer and user-generated content is really what the LLMs are pulling from. It is all about eyeballs at the end of the day. The most successful way to generate reviews is actually in the app. The move from SEO to what is now being called GEO, Generative Engine Optimization, is a shift. We used to write our content for Google. Now you actually get to write your content for people. More and more, we're looking for the human connection. People want to be seen and heard and know that their feedback is valued and taken.
We are hitting our SNL moments where we're having our repeat guests. Sid is starting her second podcast with us, well on her way to being a 5-time guest. Although Scott, with what, 3 or 4 plus your guest hosting, you're turning into our Steve Martin.
It's an honor. I
actually have my scale. I have my scale jacket already, but I'd take another one. That's like when I'm freezing in the morning. Yeah.
Well, that's nice, Sydney. I've never gotten one of those.
You have to get in.
Boo.
BEIR.
Yeah. No, it's great to be back. Has it been 3 or 4 times? I can't. It hasn't been 3 or 4 times.
I think you've been a guest 3 times and you've been a co-host. Now this is your second time. So
second time. All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. 5-timers club. There we go.
Yeah.
From ABM to PLG, from Medic to MedPick, the world of business is constantly evolving. We'll cover the who, what, where, when, why, and most importantly, how you get the transaction. I'm Matt Amundson, and he's Craig Rosenberg. Let's get started. All right, awesome. Well, I'm joined not by Craig today, but I'm joined by my guest host, Scott Albro, who you all know and love. And if you're not following on LinkedIn, seriously, what are you doing? Because he is a rabble rouser, and he knows how to get the people going on LinkedIn, which we love. And we are joined for our second time with Sydney Sloan, CMO of G2 Crowd. So super excited to have Sydney on. Sydney, man, we were at SaaStr together a couple weeks ago. You put together some amazing statistics in your presentation. I'd love to dive into that. And then you led the CMO session, which was awesome. Love to dive into that. But let's kick things off here. So, Sid, G2 Crowd, it's amazing. I'm a customer, been a customer for
it's
as long
just
as I
G2.
can
You're
remember.
OGing it.
Oh,
They rebranded a while ago to G2. But
my bad. Okay. All right. It's G2.
I think some link somewhere, like on an inside thing, I see Crowd every now and then, but it's just G2.
I'm gonna try
now
to
you can
strike
call
that.
it G2.ai if you want, if we're like hippie. Yeah.
Ooh, great. Well, I'm going to call it G2.ai. So congratulations on joining and all the wonderful things that you're doing there. Tell us a little bit. How's it been so far?
Yeah. Two-sided marketplace, that's the first time. So really thinking about like how to drive, buyer traffic and engagement, and also creating value for our seller side customers. I think the best part in the last year, because it's been a year now that I've been here, is just being part of the explosion of AI and like trying to figure out how to harness that and organize it and create, insights that are meaningful from the reviews that we capture. So we actually are asking specific AI related questions and getting AI insights from that. And then being able to be part of hopefully the teachers that are inspiring, like we get to throw away the old playbooks and create something brand new.
Yeah.
And the AI first companies are getting that by default, and the rest of us have to force ourselves to do it. And so, being in the forefront of the now what I'm calling segments to signals revolution is once again relearning everything that we thought we knew.
Well, so much of this podcast is all about, what is the new playbook, as we all started to recognize that the old playbook wasn't working. So maybe we can get into this revolution that you're talking about very specifically around signals and segments. What has changed? What are you doing differently? And I know you started, unfurling this a little bit about a year ago, but, a year into this practice, tell us what's different and tell us what you're seeing as a result.
Yeah, well, I'll drop some of the buyer behavior report stats in here because, it is that buyer behavior has radically changed in the last 6 months. It is happening so fast. So now 80% of people are using AI search as part of their research process. 80%.
Yeah.
So, if you haven't yet started thinking about how do you show up in the LLMs, you're behind. And the reason they're doing it, 30% of them say it's more productive. And the most interesting stat is that it's being used in enterprise more than anywhere else, which was astounding to me when we look at the breakdown of segments. And the three top, and I can give you some slides if you want to flash up here too, so you can have them. But where they're going first is for shortlisting is the chatbots. So 18%, 17.1% of people going there. Software review sites are the second, and then vendor sites are the third. And so this is just a reorchestration of what was before third party, second party, first party data, right?
Yeah.
Where third party before was the internet and Google, third party now are these LLMs, and we don't yet have a way to track or influence or buy from those signals from the LLMs. And so the good news is for G2 is that we did not dome our site, and we allowed the LLMs to crawl, like Reddit, like Wikipedia. And so, we are one of the top 10 influencers. Depending on what report you see, it's somewhere between 7 and 10% of the influence on those LLMs. So now more than ever, letting people realize that the reviews and the voice of the customer and user-generated content is really what is the LLMs are pulling from. And then first party. So it's kind of like, I'll do the chat, I'll do the chat. It'll give me my short list. Then I saw that was referenced in G2. So then I'll go to G2. And then once I go there, I might do another double check on the person's website. And that's kind of the flow that we're seeing. So that is the change. And it's, I think, going to change even more.
That's a huge change. Huge change.
So Sydney, it sounds like in this new way of thinking about things, there are a new set of winners and losers. Who are some of the losers in this new world?
I mean, of people who aren't investing in brand. Because I think this is back to the brand play. So when you look at what indexes the LLMs, it's, the sites that source the leaders. It's media. So they're still going to media sites. So back to how do you get pulled from media or write contributed articles for Forbes and Fast Company? And so I think for the LLMs, it's that. And then because people aren't going to spend as much in PPC on Google, then you have to figure out where people are also living outside the LLMs. So LinkedIn's going to be a big benefactor for B2B buyers because that's where they live. Other communities, I think, can do a lot. And then influencers plays a big role. And so, if people before were spending, let's say, and Matt, we've talked about this a ton, right? How much do you spend on brand awareness, so demand creation versus demand capture? Yeah. And maybe before it was 15, 20% on brand awareness and 80% on capture. How is that going to change? Now, the good news is the people that are seeing people come to their site. I just was talking to the CMO of Iron Mountain, and she's like, our traffic's down, but the quality of traffic that we're getting is higher. So people are, the people that want to find are still finding their way there. But again, it's going to change. It's going to completely change our strategy. So how does the small guy or girl stand out?
Yeah.
And I've been at a couple of founder sessions, and I'm like, well, get your founder game on, like Scott Albro, right? Have game on LinkedIn, and take the time to build up your brand and awareness. That will help. Do the contributed writing, and then really think about, where before you might have really cool advisors, like Matt, you were an advisor for SalesLoft, right? Who are your ambassadors and how do you treat them and how do you activate them in the peer side? And then also I see this a lot now, user-generated promoted content. So you get your influencers, whether you're customers or paid influencers, they post, and then you amplify their posts through the sponsored content on LinkedIn. And YouTube's going to also play a big role because it's yet to be indexed. And so video and the transcripts from YouTube. So a lot of people are coming back to like rethink their YouTube strategy. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
what
That's
we
super.
what we did 6 months ago is definitely not what we're going
Yeah.
to do 6 months from
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
Yeah. Super interesting. What do you think Google should do here? I'm just
Mm,
curious.
yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I started thinking about it when Gemini first started appearing a year ago. It's
Yeah.
like, ooh, that's interesting. Like they're taking the top third of the page to do their Gemini
Hmm.
summary, and I can imagine the debates they're having internally on, how do we still sustain our core of our business, but not lose ground to the rise of the LLMs when they have one.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, just I think in the last conference that they just announced and how quickly they're adapting, I think they're having to flip to the LLM game. I do think that the LLMs are going to figure out how to do some sponsored, like Perplexity's already talking
Sure.
about
Yeah.
it. They've got
Yeah.
like an early adopter. So I think they're, again, like internally, they're gonna figure something out because it is all about eyeballs at the end of the day. And so, as ChatGPT gets better and better, if the rest of them aren't going to catch up, then that is going to be that is the race.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I think they have to.
Totally agree.
I want to get into a couple real tactical things just because of the seat that you occupy and your relationship with some of the best G2 users. As things are changing, are you seeing your customers try to have different types of reviews, encourage their customers to leave different types of reviews, just given the fact that like so much of, anytime I'm looking at a vendor, I'm asking an LLM to do, hey, can you do some comparison? And inevitably what I see is so much G2 content coming through. What are people changing in order to sort of benefit from that?
Yeah. So I thought I had the G2 playbook down, and then I got here and I realized there were some things that I was missing.
Sure.
And so, it all starts with a review, and how you curate those. And the strongest way, the most successful way to generate reviews is actually in the app.
Mm,
So we have built integrations so you can ask users, just like you do in your personal life,
sure.
if they're enjoying it at that moment of value. If you put a prompt up, if they're a simple yes, no, or an NPS question, then you can throttle and say, would you like to leave a review on G2? And those are through connectors like Medallia or Qualtrics or
Hmm.
Pendo,
Yeah.
whatever application you're
Hmm.
using. And they're in the app, so you don't have to incentivize it. So it saves a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And they're automatically verified because they're in the product. So that's the number one thing. I'm like, if you want the easy button for reviews, convince your product teams that it's worthwhile to put the prompt in the app itself. And then you've got it always on. The other thing, as you were just asking, like, what are the people doing to like make sure the voice of the customer on the reviews is reflective of the messaging they're trying to put out there? And so I think you have to be selective of maybe you do a specific campaign around a certain product area.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've just introduced is the ability to allow a customer to leave in one review process to leave for multiple products, which has been a big unlock on value for a lot of the suites companies.
Yeah.
And so just kind of looking at the levers to be able to maximize the impact of the reviews. And then the last thing that I would say is this is interesting. So to be, sometimes it's good to be in every category and sometimes it's not.
Right.
And I'm kind of like, you pay G2 by the categories you're in. So like,
Yeah.
this is, but if you truly want to be a leader, concentrating your effort on your leading category, like what's the door that people enter most, and make sure you're a leader there. Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
and as it relates to the best software list, like companies that are in a lot of grids that actually it counts against them. So you run it like the most, just because like the big guys were going in everything and then like the little guys didn't get a
Hmm.
chance.
Yeah.
And so, they truly have to be generating leads or generating reviews in those categories at the volume. And so that's another way, like Scott, for the little ones to stand. It's like
Hmm.
pick your best lane But it
Yeah.
doesn't mean you can't buy intent from the other ones.
Yeah.
So it comes to like still building your demand engine. You can still buy intent signals from categories you're not in. That's new.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very
We used to
cool.
not let you do that.
That
Yeah.
was something that I always, always, always wanted.
Yeah.
Hey, Sydney, what kind of reviews stand out on G2? Like one thing I'm curious about is there are a lot of reviews, right? And so what reviews stand out, whether that's in terms of where they are placed on a page, whether that's in terms of, just reviews that see more engagement than others. Any
Mhm.
tips there?
Well, I mean, I think when they're well written, succinct, and a little bit punchy,
Uh-huh.
um, they tend to stand out. The way that the pages work is like it has like the top performing and then the caution ones too. And I think just from a review management, you always want to respond to the reviews. Fun fact, 4.6 is actually the most believable, like 4.4 to 4.6 is the most believable. I know everybody wants
Hmm.
4.8, 4.9, and then people start to go, I don't know if I trust it because it's only good reviews. And so
Right.
you're paying your people, and it's like we're
Right.
incentivizing because that's human behavior. But you do want to have some like constructive ones in there and then actually respond to show that you're listening to the voice of the customer
Mm.
and taking action. So I think on those ones where they're not as glowing, like then how do you respond to that and how do you manage that makes a difference
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
that shows up too. Um, and then Scott, I think like, and this is not a direct answer to your question because we don't study like what's a best
Yeah,
review
yeah,
like on the
yeah.
page. So I'm just kind of thinking through it. I think then how your teams curate the reviews to repurpose them. So I've always taken G2 reviews and put them back on my website to as the proof point. So before you did like case studies, now you can just grab a G2 review quote. So it's also curating the voice of the customer and showcasing it in your website where somebody says something about a particular feature or capability. You can go grab that and put that extra validation in on your
Yeah.
website.
Very cool. Yeah, I love that. But by the way, one thing it just, listening to you talk about that brings to mind is I've always been fascinated watching CEO founders respond in real time to complaints on Twitter X, right? Like some customer will say, "I'm canceling, my Slack subscription because of this pricing change or whatever." And Mark Benioff will come on and say, "Hey, DMing you right now. Or Brian Chesky at Airbnb does the same thing. Someone will have a
Yeah.
poor experience at one of their listings. He responds directly on Twitter. And it sort of, it strikes me as one of those things that could have gone terribly wrong for the vendor. But just because someone's paying attention and actually responds, in this case, the founder CEO, it actually turns into like this huge PR win that's a net positive for
Right.
the company. It's actually made me wonder sometimes if founders and CEOs are actually seeding these things. I have no evidence that that's the case, but anyway, do you find founders and CEOs actually replying on G2? Does that
Yeah.
does that happen?
So I'm not a big user of Twitter X as you are, but I'm still waiting for the United CEO to email me back because
Yeah,
that's the
that
only
won't
time I ever
happen.
go is to complain about when I'm flying United how much it sucks,
Yeah, yeah,
and they never respond. So take note,
yeah,
United.
yeah.
But in most of the companies I'm in, and lately have been founder led. And there's a way where you can take all the reviews and create a Slack channel. So like Kyle Porter, like that was how he started and ended his day by
Yeah.
reading the reviews, and he would take captions of those and actually put them in our all hands. And similarly with Drata, we would start with voice of the customer, and we would read like an email or a review, and the CEO would comment. So I do think that, for CEOs that want to listen to the voice of the customer, like that is the best
Yeah.
place. And it's really easy to be able to create that funnel directly to them in Slack. And then they can choose how they respond to. And by the way, they can respond to the good ones too. You don't have to
Right,
not
right.
just talk to the other ones. And I think absolutely if the founder is in there and like, thank you for that idea, or I'm glad you love that feature. We just worked on it because like it just makes it more human. And I think more and more that's what we're looking for is the human connection and the fact that people want to be seen and heard and know that their feedback is valued and taken. So it's a huge
Yeah.
benefit. And you can imagine as a buyer, like you're looking at two companies, you see one where, there's comments and complaints and there's no reaction, and you see the other where there's comments and
Yeah.
complaints and there are
Yeah.
reactions. Who are you going to lean towards?
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it signals so many valuable things, right?
Hmm.
Trust, authenticity, founder cares, founder takes ownership.
Yeah,
Like, yeah. So I love that.
exactly.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to make this all about what's the best way to use G2, but I do find it
Or
sort of like,
do you mean,
The
do you
insider
mean,
secrets.
yeah, do you mean G2 crowd, Matt?
I don't mean G2 crowd. I do mean G2.ai. But
Yeah.
it's like it's really sort of I find it to be, not just because you're there, but like because it's having this real impact on LLMs. Like it's suddenly become like really, really important again. And you recall back from the presentation that I was a part of at SaaStr, like I was highly, highly advocating for people to get back into it and really, not that they were ever away from it, but like, if it's lower down your P list, like let's move it way up, right? Just
Yeah.
given its impact on LLM search. Are you like one of the things that I've found just anecdotally, and this may not be even a trend, but it's just, something that I've run into a few times is when I'm looking for something, oftentimes I'll look via use case and I'll find some review somewhere. And I'm guessing it's coming from G2 where the review includes a use case. And so often in G2 reviews, maybe somebody will leave a review like, it's easy to use, it's simple, I like it for these types of things, but they don't necessarily go into the use case of how they're using the product. Is that something that we should be encouraging our users to talk about? Like, let's talk about your use case, or like, and maybe that's too big of an ask to talk about like, hey, look, like, are you seeing X kind of ROI as a result of
Yeah.
that? But to me, like, I think that there is something really valuable to that in terms of how the LLM will, sort of surface that information from you guys.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you mentioned G2.ai before asking that question. It's
Yeah.
like tee up. And I swear to God, you didn't, this was not pre-planned, because that's what we're building, right?
Yeah.
If you can go, we just launched it last week in beta. So you can go to G2.ai and you can ask it questions. And so we're on the process of moving. I mean, it's a beta, so we want to
Yeah.
get feedback. But the idea is that you could come with a problem to solve and not have to know the category. So
Mm.
before, it's kind of like you had to know the category to like orient yourself into the way that our taxonomy works. And now it's like, I have a problem to solve. What do you recommend? And then the prompt can like ask you what, why are you, like, if you were switching, hey, I'm not happy with this product anymore, I want to switch to this product, or I'm looking for an alternative, then that will say, well, why are you switching? Is it price? Is it performance? Because those are other questions that we ask. And so it
Yeah.
could make recommendations based on why you want to switch. Interestingly, I think that's really cool. Then that data we're capturing as G2 would be super useful for a
Yeah.
marketer to understand the why.
Yeah.
So we haven't built the seller side yet. We're just focusing on the buyer side to get that right, to get the buyer to the outcome that they want, which we think might be a business case document or an RFP or some kind of document like that. But we're still like in the early stages of understanding how people want to query and search. And our goal is to be better than the LLMs. That's what G2.ai should be. Like, if you get a better answer on LLMs, we're not done yet. We
Yeah.
still have work to do. It does come down to problem, if you want to call a problem a use case.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that I'm excited about is also like questions around, I have these products. What are the best products that you would recommend I work with? So it looks at integration reviews, which we've been
Mm.
able to start capturing as well. So we syndicate our reviews to a lot of partners, like Gong is a good
Sure.
example, and they run their partner network. And so now they can get like, not just the G2 review, but like talk about Gong in relation to what it might integrate with. And so taking those data pieces and then informing like this is my stack, what else should I be considering in that? And there are some other vendors, like I think Vendor is looking at that too. So
Mm-hmm.
I think we're as an industry on a path to like being able to answer those questions as well.
Well, I think that's really smart because one of the things that I've really noticed here, and like it feels like everything's happening in the last 6 months, right? So I think your observation around buying behavior changing in the last 6 months like only further supports my thought process here. But people use different language in LLMs than they do in search engines, right? Like when you think about, for years, you try to get inside the mind of somebody who was doing a search, whether it was like from my days at Marketo, it was like, best marketing automation solution might be a search query that somebody would run through Google. Today in an LLM, they're going to say, my company looks like this. There's probably options for marketing automation solutions that would fit my needs. I'm going to give you some criteria. Can you create a matrix for me that would tell me the pros and cons, maybe the cost differences of utilizing, the sort of top 5 most popular marketing automation systems? And that's like, it seems like a long prompt, but that's the type of stuff people are putting into it because they want the output out in like a grid that they can just load directly into a presentation or share with their peers or whomever is on the buying group with them so that they can say, okay, we've identified the vendors, we've identified what we believe are the pros and cons. We're going to either shortlist or we're going to evaluate vendors based upon some of the criteria that we've already gotten back. And all that is to say is like, the behavior of the buyer changes so dramatically. You can't just go and use like these old search terms. And quite honestly, people aren't using those old search terms. And so you need like a different way to surface that information to people. So I guess all that is to say is it sounds like you guys are really headed in the right direction. And it does feel a little bit like you're on a bit of a collision course with some of these LLMs who people are using today. But because you own the data, the way that you surface that data and thinking about that differently seems to be a really intelligent business choice.
So I think there's two things there, Matt. Like one, like I always want to be helpful. So the move from SEO to what is now being called GEO, Generative Engine Optimization, is a shift.
Yeah.
And yes, we used to write our content for Google.
Yeah.
Now you actually get to write your content for people.
Yeah.
And so the best advice that I've heard so far is Guillaume G, if folks know G, he was Internet Ramp, but he's been at a bunch of different companies. And he worked with a company called GrowthX, and they figured out how to take the personas and understand the jobs to be done of those personas and write content around the jobs to be done. So now you're like, okay, if it's a jobs to be done, that's a pain point, that's a problem, that's a responsibility that I have that maybe my product can help them with. And so that was helpful in indexing on the LLMs. And so I've started to recommend, like, in your persona, consider actually creating a persona called LLM. And so you're writing for your personas, but you add another like gem or whatever you're using called LLMs. And it's like, how does that agent or prompt give you feedback on what's the best process for writing to LLMs? What we've learned at G2, listicles are really highly consumed currently. And again, going back to user-generated content, because you're human asking a question to an LLM in a human way.
Yeah.
And so it's indexing human responses because that's how that's created. So those are some short-term things people can do is like, okay, how do I think about that? And then there are products in that GEO category, which you can now see on G2, that will help you see when you are being mentioned and referenced. So you'll have context of like, okay, where am I showing up and why? And then if you want to look at a competitor, where are they showing up and why? And then change your content strategy around that.
That's super interesting. I think, one thing that comes to mind with G2 AI or potentially the LLMs themselves is how you prompt them to create the artifacts that you need during the buying and evaluation process. I think Matt, you were sort of headed in this direction, right? It's like, if I think about a typical enterprise buying process, right? You might want to understand your requirements, then understand the vendor universe, then have a short list of vendors that you're going to go actually engage that sort of map to the requirements. Then you want to make a selection, or maybe you want to issue an RFP. just feels like having prompts for each one of those things and then allowing the buyer to sort of run that prompt in the context of, hey, I work in marketing ops and I'm looking for this type of solution, right? It's so powerful to have an LLM like create your requirements list and then create a vendor universe list and then maybe even score the vendors against those requirements and so forth. I mean,
Yeah.
doing that via prompts as opposed to like, hey, I've got to go manually collect all this data, get it into spreadsheets that make sense, or manually write an RFP or whatever it is. That seems like, when I think of G2, yes, the
So
data is so
2024. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's like, yes, as G2 looks to differentiate against the LLMs, yes, it's the data, but it's also sort of your deep understanding of how a buyer works
Yeah.
through an evaluation
Yeah.
process.
And
So,
there's a lot
yeah.
of data that we capture that we don't share publicly. So
Hmm.
pricing and other satisfaction questions. We have a whole bunch of AI questions. We've got like 65 questions and we only share like 9 of them.
Mm.
So we'll have more insights than the LLMs will have because we haven't given them access to it. But in thinking of that, I think there's two things about the prompt strategy, and we test it out on LLMs, and then we're testing G2.ai as well. And like I would start with the outcome. So I would upload an RFP. First of all, I'd ask it to write the prompt for me. Matt, you were writing the
Yeah.
prompt. Now I'm just like, hey, I'm a buyer for this. I'm looking for that. Like, help me write a prompt, and then refine, and then it would give it to me. And then I'd probably upload an RFP. Like, this is the process, especially
Hmm.
in an enterprise company. This is what a typical RFP looks like for us. My goal is to create an RFP in this format for these business problems, probably seeded a couple of products that I think I'm using or that
Hmm.
I'm switching out
Hmm.
from. So I know that's going to get in that right category of of technology. So it doesn't go off on stuff that you wouldn't want or need. And you can do it in like an hour.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that's what I was saying. I went to pull up the data. Like the, the, um, the enterprises are the ones that are doing this fastest. And we were
Sure.
trying to
Yeah.
figure out why. The research leader on this was Tim Sanders, and he and I co-presented. And it's like, well, everybody's being asked to do more with less.
Hmm.
And so, there's more folks in these large enterprises, they're having to get more creative. And so where we've always kind of thought, or at least I have, like coming from big company, going to smaller companies, that, that startups and small companies, people are more adaptable and to using new things. And that's not what we found. That,
Yeah.
enterprise people are using it just as much as,
Yeah.
or more than even,
Well,
that was surprising.
Sydney, I mean, my gut there tells me that there's just more work to be done in the enterprise when it comes to an evaluation.
Yes.
So use the
Yeah,
tools at your disposal. What's your
I agree.
perspective? Yeah.
I agree. I agree. Yeah. Yeah.
I think
It's
there's
just,
also more top down directive to be using AI in enterprise companies. I think,
Very true. Yeah.
smaller businesses, maybe there's an expectation that people are using it, but they tend to be a little looser around, sort of their top down sort of marching orders to an organization. Whereas I think like, you could pull just about any 10K report of a public company and they're saying, hey, we're not only do we want to
Hmm.
be creating AI products, but we want to use AI internally to increase efficiency and reduce overhead.
yeah. And, and they're smart people, so they can figure out how to use
Yeah.
the tools. These like, you know, when I was at Adobe, I was in a room full of Harvard grads,
Yeah.
so they'll figure it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Hey, when you were at Adobe, they were in a room full of USC grads.
Oh, I was the one. I was the one. And the only woman, but we won't go there.
I wanted to maybe switch gears here for a second. There was an announcement last week of a company that raised a round of funding. There's a new sort of, I guess, almost Deca unicorn in town. I think their valuation is $9.9 billion, and this comes in the form of Cursor. And Cursor, they shared some numbers that are just staggering. right? So they raised, I think, their A round in August or September of last year. They did their B round in December, and then they just did a C round. And they're a 2-year-old company that's at $500 million of ARR. And then I think that's shocking. That's very shocking. I think what hit closest to home for me is in a lot of the dialogue around their growth, they have said they've never served an ad. They've never sent a marketing email. And then I went digging through their LinkedIn, and they don't seem to have a marketer on staff. What does everybody think about this? Are we just talking about like perfect product at the perfect time? Is there something unique about what they're doing? I'm sure you guys probably haven't spent as much time thinking about this, but I've been losing sleep thinking about this company. So I just love to get your guys' take on this, because I think this is one of the most interesting stories that we've seen here in the technology space in the last couple of months. So I'll just open the floor. Anybody have any thoughts?
I definitely do. Having marketed to developers. So
Mm-hmm.
Cursor is a developer
Yeah.
tool that absolutely hit product market fit at the exact right time.
Yes.
But they also, developers don't like marketing.
Yes.
So you may want to go back and look and see, like, are there developer evangelists, and what's their community strategy, and like, how that works, like the GitHub models as well. Like, it's not a really big marketing led, but it was like, of course, right product, right time, that works, right? And so it just grew like wildfire because it actually worked.
Yeah. I mean, they
That's my
do have a
Yeah.
sense.
community tab right on their website. It's like next to the blog. They also have a subreddit community with 72,000 members. So
Yeah.
they're definitely doing a lot of their work through that. But Scott, I'd love your take as well.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Sydney. I wouldn't overcomplicate this. I just think it's product market, like crazy product market fit. Maybe the greatest example of product market fit ever.
Yeah.
And the only thing that I think is a little bit different here is I feel like, if you look at the Gartner hype cycle or whatever hype cycle you want to look at, right?
Yeah.
Like that is the hype cycle is very relevant when it comes to AI today.
Sure.
And I would say we are early in the hype cycle. Like we are, you know, uh near or we are still climbing our way to the peak of inflated expectations, I think is
Mm-hmm.
what it's called. It's like,
Yeah.
that thing
Yep.
early in the hype cycle where everyone's
The
super
trough of
excited.
disillusionment.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the trough of disillusionment is coming, right?
Yeah.
The reason I bring that up is because I don't think you can put all of AI generically into the hype cycle. I think
Sure.
you were talking about use cases earlier. You have to look at it by category or use case or segment or industry or what problem, whatever it is, right? And it one of the things that just strikes me about AI, remember it's still early, we're still in the first few years, is like there is this use case market problem, whatever you want to call it, where AI just works, and that's software development.
Yeah.
And it's the one place where we can see the true magic of AI, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can see that these AI code editors, they work. You can see, you guys were talking about outcomes earlier. The outcomes are really evident. You can see big organizations. We were talking about enterprise earlier. I think Amazon, like every Amazon engineer is using Cursor now, right? Like it is just this market where like product market fit is just self-evident, and you honestly can't say that about many other AI segments right now, right?
Yes.
And so it shows how powerful product market fit is, and it shows how powerful AI is. And hopefully it's a good sign for other markets, right? But this is the one place where we're seeing like the true real magic of AI.
Mm-hmm.
And Cursor is the ultimate representation of that. By the way, not to mention plenty of other tools out there that have gone not quite cursor levels, but 0 to 50, 0 to 100 in like less than 12 months.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, windsurf in that space as well. This concept of like vibe coding, which like, come on, can there be a better category name than vibe coding?
Yeah, totally. Lovable. I think lovable 0 to 40 or 50 in a few months,
Yeah.
right? It's like now okay, so one other thing about Cursor is my understanding is that the retention numbers are really strong.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one thing to look out for here is in like Cursor is not vibe coding. Like Cursor is like a co-pilot that helps you do real coding, right?
Right.
Lovable, some of these other tools are more vibe coding. It'll be super interesting to see, like, okay, it went 0 to 50, but like, what does retention look like in a year or next
Yeah.
month, right?
Right.
Because vibe coding to me comes across as more of a toy that you
Sure.
use and have fun with, right? Cursor to me comes across as like, no, this is like a real enterprise tool that once I start using it, like, I can't imagine living without it, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was interesting. We were on, I did a podcast earlier where we were talking about so many of the AI use cases were this like kind of cut and paste, right? Where you'd go to
hmm
an
hmm
LLM, you'd do the work, and you'd cut it out and you'd paste it into some other space. And here we're starting to see tools that are really embedded within a workflow, right?
hmm
They are
hmm
trusted by the users in order to complete some portion of work that 6 months ago they were doing themselves. Are we seeing like the door opening to more of this type of AI use case? Doesn't have to be amongst developers, but it could be in other spaces. And what do we think like the next frontier of this is going to be? Because to me, one of the things that I find most fascinating about the space that Cursor occupies is like, I think Scott, like one way of saying what you're saying is like this is truth, right? Like this is real. This is somebody who's really like the users of this, somebody who's really putting their trust into an AI tool. Whereas before we kind of wanted to be a little human in the loopy around it, but like, are we going to see, for marketers or for sellers, are we going to see people say, I'm going to go hands off the wheel here and let you do your thing?
Yeah.
Does that feel like reality coming into the GTM space?
I'd be curious to get Sydney's perspective on this, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe G2 has
Yeah.
some data on this. But the way I would look at it is I would look for other industries, markets, use cases that bear a resemblance to some of the things that exist in software development that
Mm-hmm.
make Cursor and AI more generally real.
Yeah.
And some things to think about there are um, a large, mostly deterministic body of knowledge that exists in text that an AI can easily understand and thereby become an effective co-pilot.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if we think about the world of sales, for example, I'm not sure that really exists in the world of sales.
Sure.
If
Yeah.
we think about the legal profession, that definitely exists in the
Yeah.
legal profession, right?
Right.
You have case law, you have code, regulations, right? All kinds of stuff that an LLM can go learn and understand and then become a co-pilot or whatever it is, right? And I do think we see some of the legal specific AI companies gaining traction as a
Yeah.
result of that. I'm sure there are others, but that's one that comes to mind where it's like, well, what actually made it? Look, I don't think you're going to struggle to find companies that want their employees to be more productive, whether they're software developers, salespeople, marketers, lawyers, whatever. The question is like right now, where is that most technically possible?
Yeah.
In a way that allows the co-pilot to really deliver productivity benefits. And the legal industry bears some resemblance. There are plenty of other industries that don't, where I think the LLMs are just going to have to get better.
Yeah. Yeah. Sydney, what are your thoughts?
So I'll answer it a little bit of a different way.
Sure.
And that is because like we see at G2 like this graduation where we call it the AI gradient.
Hmm.
And so at the very bottom is chatbots and copilots. Like
Hmm.
that's the where you start. And you can think of this as like Waze to Waymo. So if Waze didn't come to be, Uber would not be where we are today, right? If
Right.
we didn't have the ability to like help guide and direct people. So that was like even a co-pilot back then. To the next level is like intelligent assistant. So it's taking on more and more of the task versus just writing as a co-pilot. Then a task agent is the middle layer. So you can assign the task to that agent, they complete it, and then it comes back. So a little more like agent in the loop or human in the loop. Then a process agent. So this is like where three or four agents might do a simulation, and then you have a system of agents. That's Waymo. It can
Yeah.
take all the data in. It can existing data, new data, and ultimately drive the car. And what we're talking about is like next year is going to be the year of AI orchestration.
Sure.
And that is where you take multiple agents that could be built in different areas and then they are chained together versus like a process which is just a multiple prompts in a single agent system, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And so in order to do that, leading companies, and I'm doing this roadshow right now with
Yeah.
Qualified, Clay, Sixth Sense, and G2, where we're talking about putting AI into action. And so this is kind of what we're talking about is like, how do you rethink and design this new system? And so I think I'm going to write a paper on this. Like the recommendation that kind of I'm coming up with is you're going to want to hire an AI architect in your go-to-market team. So they're likely going to sit in RevOps, like right next to the VP of RevOps. They're a senior level person that is going to have responsibility for the design of your systems, the orchestration of your data, and the management of your agents. And so they're like the top level, just like an IT architect would back in the
Yeah.
day,
Yeah.
right? They've designed the
Hmm.
systems, they set up the processes, and so we just need that, but somebody that's looking at it from a new lens. Um, and then you'll still have go-to-market engineers that are responsible for their different function. So before we had MOPS people that did something, sales ops people that did something, and they talked about their systems. And I don't know if we need to like think of them in those silos anymore if we're looking at workflows from a segment or customer perspective. And so that might, a go-to-market engineer might be engineering a process for a certain customer set all the way through the process, which we don't do a good job of today. If you're doing audit of your systems and see how many people are emailing your customer or whatever, like so it could change. So we're doing a better job of servicing and communicating to certain types of customers through this single kind of engineer, and they can figure out the what is the platform good for and where do I need prompts in that solution, but it still needs to be managed.
Yeah.
That's the difference of previous lives where it's like you set up nurture, set it and forget it, and it just runs like
Yeah.
that. I don't think we're in that mode even close. Like I think it's going to continue learn, iterate, adapt. And so I like when I see like even in companies that have started to adopt the AI SDRs, like a qualified piper, it still needs someone to manage it. You train it, you manage it, you continue to
Hmm.
check on it, and so that whole category is doing that. So that's kind of how I see the future in go to market is like a reorganization of responsibility and the way that we manage the work, and the determination of where agents fit and what role they play. You did say, Scott, on the like, I don't know if there's enough data for sales. I think there are. Like when you think about calls, transcripts, emails, like all the data that a company would have internally that could train an agent, and then we actually are build G2 data sets to train agents on categories, objection handling, recommendations, comparisons. I'm seeing the birth of synthetic. I think it's synthetic is the right word.
Hmm.
Like One Mind, where HubSpot just like built an agent that basically closed business, and we're looking into that as well. And so, you know, 8 months ago, I was like, no, as
Yeah.
people still want to talk to humans, but guess what?
Yeah.
If the agent has a better answer, they actually might be okay talking to the agent.
Yeah. No, people, there will be a segment of the market that does not want to talk to a human, right?
Yeah.
But by the way, my point on sales wasn't that there's enough, I should clarify, wasn't that there's not enough data. The point about the coding space, the software development space is that all of the data and information is deterministic, right? You know whether that line of code is correct. And similar in the
Okay,
legal
gotcha.
industry, right? Where like, look, this is what the case law says, and you can see, how a judge ruled, and whereas in sales, agree, there's a ton of data. That actually might be a problem, right? Because it's
We only want to pick the
non-determinate.
good calls.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's not now we and I don't want to come across as a pessimist. I totally believe we're going to figure that out. It's just going to take a little bit longer than like,
I gotcha.
hey, here
Yeah,
is
it's
how
not
you
as
write
structured
this.
and
Here's how you
yeah.
write this line of Python to achieve this, right? And that's
Yeah.
it either works or it doesn't, right? Like LLMs like that stuff right now. And
Yeah.
that is, I think, one of the reasons Cursor and other tools in the development
Mm,
space are working right. Real
makes
results.
sense.
Yeah.
So,
Makes sense.
Geez, I mean, we just blew through an hour. Holy smokes. This was
well, it
unbelievable.
took us like 10 minutes to get started because Sam couldn't figure out the recording button,
But that was
But we have
Craig's
to blame
fault.
Craig for that.
Yeah, that
but
was
that was Craig's fault. I forgot. Yeah,
I will take this moment to throw Craig under the bus.
good. You should. Craig has a lot of Teflon on him when it comes to like mistakes, owning mistakes. So yeah, we'll give that one to Craig, Sam.
Well, Sydney, thanks so much for being on the show. This was fantastic. A lot of great a lot of great tactics that some of the listeners can take back and start implementing right away. I think there's a lot to think about. There's obviously just a whole new crop of these AI companies that are exploding right now. There's a lot to learn from them as well. And we're just gonna it's crazy. 6 months ago, the world looked completely different. 6 months from now, it's gonna look even further different.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I think
Right.
it makes it both a fun and really challenging time to be in go to market right now because it's a little bit challenging to make long term bets. But I think one of the things that we're all sort of consistent on here is this idea of GEO is
hmm
real. And it's having a
hmm
Yeah.
massive impact on the way buyers are buying.
It will be the way forward.
It is the way
Yep.
forward. This is the way. All right. Well, that was the transaction, everybody. Thanks so much for joining. Sydney, thank you for another
Thanks, Sydney.
incredible podcast.
And
Scott,
congratulations on your 5-timer.
the 5
Oh
timer.
yeah.
We got to send you a
Scott
plaque.
Albro. Woo! Send him a jacket.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of The Transaction. Craig and I really appreciate the fact that you've listened all the way to the end. What are you actually doing here? For show notes and other episodes, please visit us at thetransactionpod.com. Like and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other place you get your podcast from. Either you have walked away from your podcast device, or this is playing somewhere in the background. Someone in your house would really like for you to shut this off now.